Jada Pinkett Smith. He's obsessed with me. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Nearly a year ago, it was the infamous Oscar slap, where Will Smith rode in as the White Knight and administered some summary justice towards Chris Rock for insulting his wife. This, of course, enabled me to explain precisely why Will Smith behaved as he did, and to put both Smith and his wife under the Tudor scope. If you haven't enjoyed watching those detailed videos about both of them, you can find them in the playlists. Dive in, you'll learn a lot. It also enabled me to explain the dynamic between the two of them, which of course provided many answers to those that were seeking them. Jada Pinkett Smith has not been as prominent as of late, but she's reappeared, coming up on my radar, and has done so through radaronline.com, which provides me with an opportunity to show another aspect of her narcissism in action. The article by Whitney Vasquez tells us Jada Pinkett Smith believes Chris Rock is obsessed with her. Friends slam Netflix special where he reignited Oscar's slap feud. Well, first of all, to describe him as obsessed with her would mean that in the true nature of obsession, he would be talking about her repeatedly, that perhaps he would be calling by to try and see her, sending gifts, that there would be some kind of shrine over at Rock Towers dedicated to her, that he would bring her name up, often talk about her with friends and family. As far as I am aware, he doesn't engage in such behaviour, and therefore to describe him as obsessed is not an accurate description. It's understandable that he will bring up the Oscar slap and make mention of her into the bargain. After all, it was very prominent, and at the time he said very little about it, and has said very little about it since. And therefore, on any reading of the situation, one would suggest that it was appropriate for Rock to make mention of it if he so chose, given that he has largely hitherto remained silent about it, and this does not equate to obsession. So first of all, we have the fact that his behaviour does not support a finding of him being obsessed with her, which then leads to why might she say this about him? Well, before we answer that question, let's find out more about the basis on which she says that obsession occurs. The article states as follows: Jada Pinkett Smith thinks Chris Rock is obsessed with her, with a source insisting that's why he's made fun of her for nearly a decade, radaronline.com has learned. The slap around the world feud has been thrust back into the headlines after Rock addressed Will Smith's Oscar assault on his new Netflix special, Chris Rock, Selective Outrage. The comedian also made sure to target Jada again. Jada has had no part in all of this other than being heckled, a source told People. Chris is obsessed with her, and that's been going on for almost 30 years. So a sentence ago, it was over a decade. Now it's extended to 30 years. Somebody seems prone to exaggeration here. The insider pointed out the location where Chris recorded the Netflix show, saying, "Look where he chose to film his Netflix special, her hometown of Baltimore. Obsessed." I put that down more to coincidence than thinking he thinks to himself, do you know what? I'll film in Baltimore because that's where Jada Pinkett Smith is from. No. The source insisted that Jada and Chris's beef stems from nearly a decade ago. So we're back to a decade, it's not 30 years, when Pinkett backed the #OscarsSoWhite movement, which was also the year that Will was snubbed for the Best Actor nomination for his performance in Concussion. Years ago, his wife said I should quit the Oscars. I shouldn't host because her man didn't get nominated for Concussion, and then he gives me fucking concussion, Chris joked in his special. But the insider scoffed at the comedian's allegations, insisting she never asked Chris to not host the Oscars ever. She publicly said in a Facebook post at the time Chris would be a great Oscars host and is perfect for the job. Back in 2016, she helped start a movement by questioning why there are so few black members. And Chris took it to this, the source added. In Chris's Netflix show, he repeatedly called Jada a bitch and said she deserved to be made fun of. I did some jokes about her. Who gives a fuck? That's how it is. She starts it, I finish it, Rock said. That's what the fuck happened. Nobody's picking on this bitch. She started this shit. Nobody was picking on her. The Insider responded to the slurs, claiming they were shocked at how many times Chris uses the word bitch in referring to Jada. Will's wife isn't focused on the drama with Chris. Right now, Jada is focused on her book that will come out this year, the source concluded. Well, what's all this about then? Well, it's quite clear that when Chris Rock talks about Jada Pinkett Smith in this manner, he's providing her with challenge fuel. Remember, as a consequence of a comprehensive analysis under the Tudor scope, I found that Jada Pinkett Smith is a narcissist. And therefore, when she is dissed, insulted, talked about in the manner that Chris Rock does, this is a threat to control. He's talking about her, so it's fuel. But he's challenging her because he's basically suggesting that she's not a nice person, that she's a bitch, that she behaves in a particular way which merits ridicule. Rather than laughing it off and thinking, well, he's a comedian, he's telling jokes about me, so what? I don't care. It, of course, gets to her, because it gets to her narcissism, because it's a threat to control. Now, it's not the case that her narcissism directs her to go and find Chris Rock and to administer a swift knee to the nuts in order to silence him as a direct assertion of control, nor does she bring about legal action to shut him up. Instead, what happens is that an underling is instructed to assert control on her behalf by proxy, by basically smearing Chris Rock by suggesting that he's obsessed. Of course, just like Harry's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith believes that everything revolves around her, that the universe circles around Jada Pinkett Smith. And therefore, because some jokes are made about her every once in a while, that equates, through her perspective, to the individual being obsessed. It's an overreaction and an exaggerated one driven by her narcissism. If we were actually to go to the evidence, which is something I always encourage you to do, and ascertain the number of instances in the last 10 years that Chris Rock has mentioned Jada Pinkett Smith, I should imagine that it would be less than 100. How many days have there been in the last 10 years? 3,650. So let us assume, for instance, that Rock has mentioned her 100 times in shows that he's done, perhaps by referencing her in interviews. That's less than 10%. It's not even 3%. That would not equate to obsession. Might he mention her more than other people? Yes, but still, within the context of the number of times that she's mentioned with regard to the time period, that would not, by any reckoning, equate with obsession. But you know why she has to deem it as obsession. Because first of all, her narcissism deems that people will be obsessed with her because she's so amazing, so interesting, so fascinating. Secondly, it's done to nullify the threat to control posed by him calling her a bitch, by smearing him in this way. But it's very useful, of course, to always go to the evidence, to put it in a context, and to find he's not obsessed. And then further, then you ask yourself, okay, if his behaviour does not fit with somebody that's obsessed, why does she say it? The reason being that as a narcissist, his comments cause a problem for her by way of a challenge and a threat to control, and therefore she needs to respond by stating that he's obsessed, to smear him, so that people will go, you're absolutely right, Jada, he's obsessed with you, he goes on about you all of the time. And those third parties' confirmation of agreement provide her with the subconscious need for control that she has. The fact, for instance, that she reads into it, that he's done his Netflix special being filmed in Baltimore and it's her hometown, that amounts to being obsessed with her. There could be plenty of other reasons why he's chosen Baltimore. And this is actually quite common, that you will see, for instance, certain narcissists They'll assume, for instance, that a message is being sent to them. It's part of their magical thinking. This I experience with certain individuals that contact me, that they believe that I'm talking specifically and directly to them through the videos. I don't mention their name. I don't even make an indirect reference to who they might be. But somehow they believe that my video was put on that particular day specifically aimed at them. It wasn't. My videos aren't aimed at anybody other than my general viewership. But those individuals believe that they are special, that they merit my special attention, and therefore that I have specifically created a video just for them, directed at them, even though I don't know them and I haven't mentioned their name. It shows the level of delusion. Now, of course, Jada Pinkett Smith knows Rock, Rock knows Pinkett Smith, and he knows where she comes from, I would assume. But again, her narcissism interprets him choosing Baltimore as being linked to her. It's not. But her narcissism believes that she's so special, and of course, her paranoia is generated to cause that also. Accordingly, more examples of why Jada Pinkett Smith is a narcissist and her narcissism in action. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.